Welcome to Positive Outcomes, where leaders turn hard-won experience into income, impact, and freedom.
Hi, everyone. Another night for excitement. I am super excited. Welcome to Positive Outcomes, where professionals and leaders turn their expertise into income, impact, and freedom. And of course, I'm your host, Dr. Doreen. Okay, it's not about me. Let's talk about our visitor today, right? Our guest today, which we are so excited and I know we are going to have a great conversation. Today's guest is Zander Keig.
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure I say that right. And he is very particular the way he pronounces his name. And I love that, guys. Be bold enough to tell people this is how you say my name, okay? All right. So Zander is an award-winning social worker, speaker, caregiver, and educator who presents sought-after emotional well-being webinars and also hosts the popular Umbrella Hour podcast. Wow. He's dedicated his career to supporting emotional health, equipping people with tools to thrive. I love that. Zander, you are welcome to Positive Outcomes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Doreen. It's wonderful to be here, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. And podcast host to podcast host, I'm sure we're going to have a good time. I'm sure we're going to have a good time tonight. So guys, welcome, share it, take your paper, take your pen, come with an open mind, come ready to unlearn so you can relearn. Just come. We are so happy to have you guys here. So let's get started. What first inspired you to pursue social work as your path?
Boy. Well, I started out on my professional path in the military, and then I went into law enforcement. And so clearly I was looking for something, right? A way to be of service. And so those are two good, careers for people who want to be of service. I thought about social work when I was thinking about how I might be able to prevent people from perhaps showing up in the criminal justice system, or people who maybe like me found the military to be the last resort, or maybe not the last resort, but the sort of an escape from things. A lot of people join the military because they're escaping something, a neighborhood with gang violence or an abusive family or poverty, whatever it might be. And so, that was the case for me. I didn't join the military because I had a dream to serve in the military, although I did hold it in high regard. I come from a military family, but it really was something that I felt was necessary for me. When I was a teenager, I spent some time in a group home. And as you might imagine, when you're in a group home, there's interaction with social workers. And it was in that environment that I had really wonderful and really awful experiences with social workers. But thankfully, I let the wonderful experiences override the awful experiences. And in my mind, I was thinking, I didn't want to work with young people, but I thought the type of work that social workers do, particularly in certain settings like case management, which is what I wanted to do, it made sense for me to look into it. I didn't want to become a psychotherapist. I wanted to do case management, and social work was the way to be able to do it professionally, right? I could get a master's degree in social work. I could become licensed as a social worker. And so then I would also be compensated well, right? Otherwise, I could have maybe gotten a bachelor's in social work and then went to work, as a case manager, but I did want to be able to work with people that were dealing with more significant challenges and also in just larger systems. I went to work for the Department of Veterans Affairs and the Department of Defense. And so they required that we are licensed. And so that's the track that I took.
Wow. I love the way you turned your journey into service. Because from what you're saying, being in a group home, having experiences with case managers, you said to yourself that I can do this and I can do it better, right? So I love the way that you position yourself. You're not doing this from a selfish reason. You're doing it from a service. Like you want to give back so that they can experience a better situation than maybe some of the experiences that you had going.
Yeah.
And that is amazing.
Right, because when you are at the whim of another person, right? If you are incarcerated, if you're institutionalized, if you are in a treatment program, if whatever it is, you're relying on the help, the assistance, the expertise, the knowledge of these professionals. And when the situation arises when individuals who have that position of authority then abuse that authority or neglect the care of the people within their setting, the disservice is more than just minor. It's a major disservice. And, I wouldn't say that I had the idea that I would do it better. I was more focused on, I wanted to be able to provide people with the resources that they needed. Right? With case management, that's what you do. They're in a hospital, they just had surgery, they're discharging home. What do they need in order to make their healing a success?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Right? And
Amazing.
what can I set up for them? Who can I connect them with? Because I'm not a physical therapist. I'm not going to do physical therapy, but I can put in an order,
Mm-hmm.
or alert the physical therapist who's going to set them up for services out in the community after their discharge, right? If somebody's in a drug and alcohol treatment, right, there's things that we could do to set them up for the likelihood of success and sobriety once they get home. Where are you going? What are the meetings in your area? What are the services available? So I just thought, it does a disservice to people to just say, well, I take care of you while you're here, even if minimally, but once you're gone from here, you're not my problem anymore. It's like, well, yes, of course, I'm not going to be working with those individuals once they're out of my care, but I don't want to just drop them. I want to make sure to give them what we would call a warm handoff,
Mm-hmm.
right? A resource
A
or,
resource.
yeah,
Yeah.
and also just knowledge and skills, strategies to navigate whatever it is they were going to encounter after they left wherever they were.
That is amazing. You want to be very resourceful and you
Yeah.
really want to, yeah. So that's the word. You really want it to be
Yeah.
resourceful. And that's really what that's our jobs, right? We just
Yes.
don't want to go and be complacent. We want to be resourceful.
Yeah.
We want to really do what we are really called to do. And I can tell that you are on that path. You have worked in a variety of roles within caregiving and education, right? What keeps you motivated in this field?
Well, partly it's because of that very point you just made, which is that my license is transferable from state to state and, population to population, sector to sector, right? So I can work in drug and alcohol treatment, and then I can go and work in a hospital setting, and I can go work in a community setting, and I can work in a lot of different settings and not have to retrain, right? All I have to learn when I go from setting to setting and population to population that I'm serving is I just have to learn specific language, right? The vocabulary, right? It's like I know how to talk cop because I was in law enforcement. I know how to talk military because I'm in the military. I know how to talk healthcare because I worked in a healthcare setting. So I can have conversations with doctors and nurses, not to the details. I didn't go to medical school or nursing school, but I know enough to be able to communicate. And that's really helpful. And so with caregiving in particular, I took care of my father the last 5 years of his life. And because I was a social worker, I was able to have good relationships and communication with the social workers, the CNAs, the nurse practitioners, the RNs, LVNs in the care facility where my father was the last couple of years of his life. And I could
Mhm.
talk to them in a way that was professional to professional, even though I was the caregiver.
Right.
I had the language for it. And I think that's really important because when we're able to communicate with people what it is we need or want or what services need to be provided, when we can say things in a way that they actually understand, that makes it easier. It's not going to take as long, hopefully, to get the resources that we need, get the service that we need, the attention that we need. It shouldn't necessarily have to be that way, but that's the
Mhm.
way it is.
Right.
If I go into a corporation that's focused on computers and technology and engineering, and I talk to them like I'm a cook in a kitchen,
It's not going to resonate at all.
no,
Yeah. Not at all.
no.
Yeah.
But because I've worked in so many different environments, including being a cook in a kitchen before I went to college,
Wow.
right? I have the ability, it's almost like being like a translator or an interpreter. because and which I use now to do the bridge building and depolarization work that I do, because I can be in a room with people who are on opposing sides of issues for whatever reason, name, let's say religion, and
Mhm.
I can help bridge those conversations because I have a master's in theology, and I know how to speak to people of various religious traditions, not as if I'm a practitioner or was raised in the system, but I know more than the layperson,
Wow.
right? And then I can interpret from the other side that's advocating or arguing for something, and I can put it into terms. And so it's very useful. And I think
Right.
as social workers, we're able to do that because we move around and work in different systems, and we collect jargon from all of these different systems.
Right. Wow. I can really
Yeah.
see how your education is really helping you, like I would say, connect the dots
Yeah,
for better patient outcomes, right?
absolutely.
Better outcomes. You're able to be able to connect the dots, and having that expertise and that educational background, that lingo, like you just talked about your master's in theology, is helping you to know how to communicate, and it's diversifying your experience. Means you can work with a diverse group of people just because you have the education and the expertise to put all the thoughts together, which is absolutely amazing. I'll tell you that for sure. But I have to go back one step to your military background. How was that like? Shape you to be who you are today in any way?
I'm almost 60. I turned 59 this year, and I served in the military starting at the age of 20, so, and for not very many years. So it was another lifetime ago. But yes, in many ways, I was served in the US Coast Guard, which if people are familiar with the different branches of the military, the cultures are very different. And so the Coast Guard is not the Department of Defense. It was Department of Transportation when I was in. It's now Homeland Security. It's its own unique culture, even though all of them are, but it's because it's outside of the Department of Defense. It's a domestic military. It's US based almost exclusively, not exclusively. And so when I talked about how some people join the military like I did to escape something or because it was necessary, what I needed at the time was stability and order. My life was a bit chaotic and with not much stability. And so I knew that if I went into the military, I would get that. And it did give me that. It also gave me an occupation. I met people from all over the country. I was an EMT and a firefighter, so I was doing life-saving
Oh,
work.
wow.
So it gave me a sense of purpose that then, yeah, I guess it did. It set me on that trajectory for going into law enforcement right out of the military and then finding my way into other things, in the interim between law enforcement and social work. I did a few other things. I was kind of seeing what else was out there and what else I could do. I was exploring different options,
Right. Do you think
like
that's
being a
also
cook.
yeah. And you became a cook.
Yeah.
Where? At the military or after you?
After I got out of the military and I went into law enforcement, then my mother developed a type of cancer that took her life fairly quickly.
Oh, I'm sorry
And
to hear that.
I took a leave of absence in order to take care of my mother. And then I just never went back. It was very stressful, as you might imagine. I was working as an undercover narcotics agent. It's a very stressful job. And so I
Yeah.
decided not to go back to that work, but I wasn't
Mhm.
exactly sure what I was going to do next. So I stayed in law enforcement. I became a police officer on a community college, what we called junior colleges back in the day.
Oh,
And then I went to work as a liaison officer for a school district. And so I did that for a little while until I did a significant pivot and went into working in natural foods and cooking in vegetarian restaurants. Which was not a pivot for me personally. I was at the time a vegetarian. I was eating, natural foods, but that was a significant career
what made
pivot.
you to pivot that direction then? Because it's like
Well,
all from law enforcement is totally
yeah.
different from the other path.
Well, there is a type of service, right? In the sense of we talk about it now as well-being, and part of well-being is physical well-being. And, physical well-being or physical health, the foundation of that are things like sleep and nutrition and hydration and movement and laughter, all of these kinds of things. So working in the natural foods, industry, I was helping teach people how to eat more healthful, right?
Mm,
It's like, oh, I would actually teach people how to cook things. It's like, okay, you like biscuits and gravy, I'll teach you a healthier version of that. You like macaroni and cheese, I will teach you a healthier version than that. You like meatloaf, right? So I was teaching people how to make healthier versions of the food that they loved rather than telling people you need to stop eating the foods you eat. You need to start eating this whole other diet that's foreign to them.
yes, yes,
And so I saw that as a form of service as well, just
yes, it is.
different, right? Yeah.
Wow, that you have a vast majority of experience and in different areas. And I love the way they are all connecting like to
Yeah.
one another, which is totally, totally amazing. So what will you tell someone, or there's a family right now watching us talk tonight, and they are contemplating about sending someone to the military?
Hmm.
What advice do you have for them right
Oh gosh. Okay. I would recommend that they look into the Coast Guard and the Air Force as the first line of possibility. They're smaller than all the other branches. I mean, there is a Marine Corps, but that's very oriented towards war fighting for the most part. So the Coast Guard and the Air Force, they are military, but they're small. They're more elite and they have opportunities that the other branches may have, but it might take longer to get access to them because there's hundreds of thousands of people versus tens of thousands of people. The thing about the military that a lot of people don't know is the opportunities that are available, especially if you re-enlist. In your first tour of duty, the first 4 years, you're a grunt. You're doing what you have to do, what you're told to do. You're not necessarily going to like it at all. It's going to be difficult. You're going to be in physical pain sometimes. You're going to
now?
be spending time away from your family and your
Sure.
friends, and you're going to not be able to do the things you want to do when you want to do them. However, if you stay in that 4 year period and you re-enlist, then all of a sudden this whole world opens up. And I didn't take advantage of that. I wished I had tuition assistance. You can get a college degree for free while you're serving in the military. You don't need to get out with a GI Bill and go to college. You could do it while you're in the military. You can
Wow.
learn an occupation that you live all around the world. They move you around every 2 or 3 years. You can move around the country, around the world, and learn new things and different things. And the level of responsibility you take on in the military at a young age
Mhm.
far exceeds the level of responsibility that you will be able to take on usually in a civilian capacity, right? It's like
Wow.
as you're working up, they give you responsibility. They give you people to be in charge of. And it starts out with, a small number of people and it gets larger and larger and larger. And so they build leadership. It's just from the ground up. And so, if you have a family member, a son or daughter who is thinking it might be a good option, I recommend doing that. There are alternatives like Job Corps, which I did work for Job Corps as a career transition specialist. And Job Corps is a fine alternative to going into the military. It's also residential. You wear uniforms, you learn a trade. They have their own dining rooms. It's healthcare is provided while you're in training. So, something like that. Another option would be apprenticeship programs. So I don't want to just plug the military. I think apprenticeship programs, Job Corps, and the military, in particular, Air Force, Coast Guard, and now Space Force. Space Force is also wonderful. But it's it's not like you see on the commercials, and in TV or in movies. It can be much better to that and much worse than that. It all depends. That's the thing about the military is it depends a lot on what occupation you choose, which commands you're serving in. It has a lot to do with that. Your life can change dramatically when you move from one command to another.
Wow. That
Yeah.
is amazing. So that's great information, guys, because I know for sure maybe one of you or one of the people listening to us right now, they're in the position where they're in that crossroads, right? Should we do it?
Yeah.
Should we not do it?
Yeah.
Should we do it? Should we not do it? So
I
here's
mean,
good
yeah.
information.
You get
Yeah.
paid to learn a trade. You get free housing or subsidized housing. You get free food or subsidized food, right? Everything that's available on base is tax free. Watching a movie, getting your oil changed, buying
Getting your oil
groceries.
change?
Yeah,
Getting your oil.
the big bases,
Wow.
the big Navy bases and the big Air Force and and army posts. They have movie theaters, they have gyms, they have department stores, grocery stores, they have auto mechanics, everything. Everything is there. It's at the police, the fire station. It's like a little community.
That is super amazing.
Yeah.
I never thought about that, but the advantages and just the fact that you go to school and you don't worry about school loans and things
Mhm.
like that, that is something that people really need to take advantage of. All right, let's pivot a little bit in another angle here. Hosting Umbrella Hour, okay? Hosting Umbrella Hour has given you a platform. And I want everyone listening to us right now, please run after this to Umbrella Hour. What kinds of conversations or stories have you impacted the most? Like, what do you guys talk about? And among everybody you've spoken to, which one really got to you?
Well, the Umbrella Hour, we're in our third year currently. We're hosted by the UK Health Radio Network. We're one of maybe 50 podcasts on the network, and all of our shows are focused on health, and so ours is as well. But we look at that very broadly or holistically. As I mentioned earlier, right? Social health, physical health, emotional, mental, financial, spiritual, right? Like all the different types of well-being or health. We also are focused on primarily interviewing people who come from the LGBT community. And so we interview people from all over the world and then just talking about maybe the work that they're doing. Because, like, for example, we've interviewed twice now a member of the transgender community who's a chiropractor, right? About the work that he does. We've talked with individuals who work in HIV and AIDS advocacy and recovery programs, individuals who are physicians, but also people who are just talking about maybe advocating for policy change around health, around, what's covered, what's not covered, where people can seek services if they live in rural areas. And,
Mhm.
so it's the LGBT perspective
Uh-huh.
on all the ways that we could talk about health.
Wow, that is amazing. And how often do you guys do the show?
We record between 2 and 3 episodes every month, and typically we release a new episode every 2 weeks, and that's on the UK Health Radio Network and also on the umbrellahour.substack.com. We have a Substack page where I upload maybe the last year and a half, but for all 3 years worth, that would be on the UK Health Radio Network. You can also find us on like Spotify and Apple, but it's hard to find us because we're one of many podcasts on the UK Health
Right,
Radio Network.
right,
So on
exactly.
Substack, it's just us. I
Us
started
and me.
moving them over there.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense and will make
Yeah.
it easier for people
Yeah.
to find.
Yes.
So, as a social worker and speaker, what have you found let me say, most effective in helping people improve their emotional well-being?
A lot of it has to do with letting people know that emotion regulation and distress tolerance and conflict mitigation and stress management are all things that we are capable of doing once we have the tools and the strategies and we are able to practice them, right? So for example, when people take up a mindfulness practice or a meditation practice, you want to be doing something like that all the time, not just when you're under stress, because when you're under stress, the ability to recall, oh, I could probably meditate right now, right? Or I could pray, or I could take a walk, whatever it is. When we're stressed out, we're not thinking about what could I do right now to
Yeah.
activate the parasympathetic nervous system to calm me down. We're just in a heightened sense of that sympathetic nervous system. It's just on overrun. So you know, so paying attention, teaching people how to pay attention to actually as a foundational element to well-being, emotional and all others, is sleep. I focus a lot on sleep. Sleep is primary. If we don't get enough good sleep, everything else in our life is not going to be as good as it could be, right? Another way of saying that is that when our sleep is dysregulated, so is every other system in our body, right?
True.
Our ability to regulate our hormones, our weight, our immune response, our hunger, our everything,
Oh,
our
true.
blood sugar levels, right? Everything gets dysregulated when their circadian rhythm is out of regulation. And so I love to teach people how to regulate their sleeping And then, when I have done psychotherapy, and one of the times in my life when I did psychotherapy, I started focusing on sleep with all of my clients. And I noticed that within about a month, that even though their quote problems didn't dissolve, their response to their problems diminished. And they didn't feel like they needed psychotherapy anymore. They felt like they
Mm.
could move on to maybe working with a coach or working on their own because they weren't reacting to everything anymore. They had found a way to regulate their sleep and then everything else that falls in line with that so they could respond rather than
Mm.
react to
Reacting.
the
Yeah.
distress. Yeah.
Amazing. And that's where we all want to be. We want to be able to respond without reacting because it's very different. When you
Yeah.
respond without reacting, you have different outcomes, right?
Well, yeah, and I think what's my impression is that a lot of people think that it's possible to eradicate conflict, stress, and yeah. And, uncomfortable interactions in our life. It's never going to
No,
happen.
it's never
It's
going to happen.
never going to happen. The only thing we can do is learn how to
Money.
navigate that, how to deal with it in a way that is not dehumanizing,
Right.
right, in a way that builds up our resilience, because we're seeing right now all across our country and countries all around the world that when we dehumanize people and we aren't acting in a civil manner, the depolarization just festers, it blossoms, and then we end up with violence
Mm.
that is very unfortunate.
Right. The truth, and you said it, and you said it so well, is that you cannot run away from stress. Stress is
Uh,
going to happen. You cannot avoid it. It's part of life. It's the journey. It's part of the process.
yeah.
So some people just don't want to deal with it. If you sleep, you wake up, it's still going to be there. If you go
Yes.
drink alcohol, you wake up, it's still going to be
Yes.
there. Whatever you do, you come back, it's still going to be there. So actually embrace it, put it on the table, and just deal with it. And if you deal with it effectively, it will prevent reoccurrence. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes songs keep coming back and coming back because we have not given ourselves the time to address that worry or to address that stress or to address that conflict. We don't want to deal with it. That's why it keeps coming back and forth. So
Yes.
this is really good what you're saying, that don't avoid it, deal with it, address it well so that it doesn't come back again.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And when you build up that skill set, then you feel confident and competent in being able to tackle more and more and more, right? It's if we had a conflict-free environment, I don't think we'd be very happy people, right? There's
Oh,
something
it'll be very
about
boring.
striving and gaining and achieving and even competition, good, healthy competition, it motivates us. And when we run up against people or ideas that we don't like, then it can spark in us a desire to work for change. And that wouldn't have happened otherwise. So,
Right.
in addition to the theology degree and the social work, I have a master's in conflict analysis and resolution. And
What
it's
else? How many degrees do you have? You just want to
just
list
just
all
the
of it?
three and the college. But it's the idea is that most people view conflict in a negative way, but there are also positive outcomes from conflict. It has a lot to do with our interpretation of it and also how we mitigate it or resolve it or manage it. Well, given the situation, we have to figure out how we're going to respond to it, and it's not always going to be the same way.
Yeah, that is absolutely amazing. So, what unique challenge do you see professionals facing today when it comes to balance and self care? Balance it all up, if there's a real
Yeah.
word called balance.
Yeah, with self-care, I have real, concerns about is because I'm around a lot of therapists and I can see that they're dealing with compassion fatigue and they're not yet at burnout, but compassion fatigue is a sign, a symptom that you're on the way towards burnout, which the World Health Organization has labeled an occupational hazard. So we don't want burnout. It's very detrimental to the person and the environment they work in,
So, let me
and the
take you
people
back
they're
a little
serving.
bit.
Yeah.
Can you break down what compassion fatigue is and how does it show up?
Yeah, with compassion fatigue, oftentimes what's happening when we're in helping professions, whether that's psychotherapy or case management or medicine or first responders, right? When we're in helping professions, we are typically working with individuals when they are at their worst, right? When they are at the highest level of distress or trauma, right? And so our ability as those helpers, as those first responders, to be able to have good barriers, right? Good boundaries so that we can be compassionate towards them in their struggle without taking that struggle on ourselves. It's something we have to be attentive to, and we have to be actively engaging in making sure that we have good boundaries so that we're not becoming apathetic, right? Which is what happens with compassion fatigue,
Right.
because we
Yeah.
become fatigued mentally, emotionally, physically, socially, spiritually, when we are seeing person after person after person who's dealing with, a lot of stressful
Right.
experiences,
Okay.
trauma experiences. And
Yeah.
so, and then if we are a helping professional who has a history of trauma, right? Then sometimes that's going to make it even more difficult because
Right.
we're
Yeah.
going to identify with that person that we
Exactly.
are working with, that we're
Exactly.
serving, that we're helping, and we're not going to have good boundaries. We're
Hmm.
not going to be able to do that very well.
True.
And so that's when burnout happens, right? And burnout is when you're resorting to, a bottle of wine at the end of the day. You're no longer spending time with the people you love and care about because you're just too tired all the time.
True.
You're angry, you're frustrated, you get snap really easily. You're calling in, you're complaining a lot, you're having arguments or conflict with people, right?
Yeah.
It's not good. It's not good for the person. It's not good for the workplace. It's definitely not for the people that we're serving. They need us at our best, and we need to know when it's time to take a break. When I talk to clinicians about self-care, I always emphasize that there's a difference between self-soothing, self-comforting, and self-care. So the difference would be that self-soothing and self-comforting are temporary, right? A mani-pedi, a massage, going out to happy hour with the girls, going to the gym, every once in a while doing something, right? Binge watching your favorite show just so you can get some good laughter in, good hormones, right? So those are good, right? We want to divert our attention from the things that are stressing us out. The self-care are the things that we can do that have the long-term benefit, not the short-term benefit of distraction. The long-term benefit comes from when we're paying closer attention to the food that we're eating and making sure that it's mostly healthful foods, right? Not junk kinds of foods, that
Hmm.
we are making sure that we're getting a good amount of movement, exercise, whatever that is for the person, dancing, jumping rope, running, whatever it is, right? Yoga, getting a good night's sleep, making sure that all the sleep hygiene, issues, like people can just go online. What is sleep hygiene? And get all the things that you can do to try to remedy if you're having sleep difficulties. Making sure that you're spending time with people that you love and they love you and make you feel good. Because if we're isolating and withdrawing, it's not a good sign,
Mm.
right? And so, again, having a glass of wine after dinner, no big deal, right? At the end of
Hmm.
the day, a bottle of it every night, that's a
That's a
problem.
problem.
That's
Yeah.
a problem. And
That's a
so,
problem.
with self-care, you're attentive to when your self-soothing and self-comforting become something that is interfering with your self-care.
That's amazing. I really want to hear, because your journey is really intense and very interesting. How has that shaped your life experiences? How has that shaped the way you teach, support, and encourage others right now,
Mm,
based on your own personal life journey?
yeah, no, thank you for that question. Shameless plug, I'll just mention it. I did publish a book last year where I told my story, but it's in a self-help kind of style. It's not just memoir. It has tools and strategies. And that's what I do. So when I'm doing I'm a psychoeducation webinar, presenter. That's what I do for a living now. And I do it from a place of, I'm not I'm not perfect at this. This is also something that I'm practicing every day and am always learning more about. I don't talk down to people. I talk to people as if they're invested in wanting to do what's right for themselves. They just might not know what it is. So I present it in a very simple way, like that doesn't challenge, or my attempt is to not challenge any of their preconceived notions. So, for example, you've probably noticed that when I mentioned something about meditation and then I said mindfulness and then I said prayer,
You did. I noticed that. Yes, you did.
right?
Yeah.
Because for some people, if I just said prayer, they would shut down their listening. If I
Yep.
just said meditation, they would shut down their listening. So that's part of that interpretation and that translation that I talked about. I
Mhm.
know that when I'm doing a webinar for 50 to 500 people, that they all are coming from different geographic locations and religious backgrounds and racial and ethnic and
Yep.
class,
Very diversified group.
very diverse. And so I need to be able to talk in a way that is as broad as possible without it doubling the time that my workshop is. So
Exactly.
so that's what I do is I use different words
Mhm.
so that people don't sit there going, "Well, this doesn't really relate to
Right.
me."
Right. So
My
you're
I
very intentional with the
Yeah,
words that you're picking so everybody feel like they have a seat on the table.
as many as possible, hopefully. Yes.
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 That's actually amazing. And what I want to just want to tap into your life, your journey, your life experience. Did you learn that through some of your life experiences, or is just something that did you take a course to learn that? Was it an intuitive thing? Like, how did you learn talking to
Yeah.
people like that?
Well, I'm first generation Mexican American. My family's from Mexico, and so my grandmother brought her 5 boys as a single mother from Mexico and left the entire family, her like 12 siblings in Mexico to come to the United States for a better life for her sons. And, when you're navigating society with a different cultural foundation, right? Mexican, Roman Catholic, we were in California. It wasn't entirely odd, but the school I went to, me and my 2 cousins. I have many other cousins, of course, but the 2 that were with me in my school, we were the only 3. Everybody else was
Mhm.
either Irish or Polish or German, right? It was so so we stuck out. We were the brown kids who ate funny food, you know what I mean? And so I immediately had to learn like, oh, I'm different. So, but I'm in this place. I need to learn how to adapt. And in some circles, this word will be a negative, but it wasn't a negative in my family, which was assimilate. And so a lot of immigrant families know exactly what that means. It's like you're one way in the house, you're another way in outside in the streets, but not in a way that is, I wasn't troubled by it. I didn't
Mhm.
feel like I was at those 2 parts of myself were at odds with each other. I didn't grow
Mhm.
up with that. I was very
Mhm.
well integrated. And so I think that's the starting point. And then my father was very much involved in what was called the human potential movement
Oh,
back in
wow.
the late 70s, early 80s. He was a trainer for something called EST, which became Landmark Forum. So people might be familiar with the more current version of that. So as a child, my father took me to EST workshops for
Wow.
children. And I got a lot of
Yeah.
really
Also good
amazing,
exposure, of course.
very good
Mhm.
skills, a good exposure to just people think differently, speak differently, believe differently, behave differently. We live in a pluralistic society. How are you going to make your way in it without being like the pinball in the pinball machine, getting bounced
Mhm.
around, right? I didn't want that life. My father didn't want that life for me either. So
Mhm.
I'd say that was part of it. And then when I was 12, my father took me to the Transcendental Meditation Ashram to get my mantra for my 12th birthday. So I started meditating at age 12. So I think,
Wow.
just being first generation, growing up, in the United States, the EST, workshops as a child, I spent about 4 or 5 years in
Mm.
those workshops. And then meditation, and there's other things, right? As I go into my adolescence, I was institutionalized for a year. And so I got a lot of good skills in an
Mhm.
environment where some of the staff were not very good.
Can
You know
imagine.
what I mean? It's
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had the group home and I had a group home for a year and a half and a
Mm.
psychiatric hospital for a year. And so those 2.5 years really did provide me with a particular lens that I bring with me everywhere I go, because I know the difference between being helpful and being harmful. And
Mm.
I know what it feels like to be disregarded and dehumanized.
Mm.
And I know what it feels like, from as a child who was bullied to, being a patient in a psychiatric hospital where people sometimes treated us very poorly. And so I,
And you
I
would think
know that
otherwise, right?
experience.
And you would think otherwise.
I do not
So
want I want to be responsible for somebody feeling the way that I felt because of something I've done,
that's
personally or
it.
professionally. Yeah,
That's it. That's intense. It's not
yeah,
even wanting people to feel a
yeah,
particular way, just having that value is really, really,
yeah.
it's amazing.
It's
It's
awful.
amazing.
It's
Yeah.
awful to be disregarded and
Yeah.
separated from your family and your friends and your society. When you spend 1 year locked in a psychiatric institution, it's like the world around you is going on and everything is stopped for you. And then in that environment, there's so much unkindness.
You know, saying that just it bleeds my heart because you actually think otherwise, right?
Yes.
Like we are healthcare professionals and our goal is to give you that comfort. Our goal, because that's what we took an oath for. And for you to be a healthcare professionals, and I'm talking to some of the healthcare professionals that could be listening to us right now. I hope you've heard Zander's story. It is very change position, change your role, change
That's right.
jobs
That's right.
immediately,
Yeah.
because that is a place of compassion, of caregiving, of
Yeah.
love. People are there, they don't want to be there. So you being there is for you to show them love, show them compassion, show them empathy, rather than doing, I don't even want to say the other words that he mentioned, because the last thing you want to do is to make somebody feel horrible
Yeah.
when they're already horrible.
Yeah.
Meaning that you see someone that has a wound and you intentionally take a knife and you're digging inside the wound to make it more painful. So that touched me really hard when you say
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And I really hope and pray a lot of us healthcare professionals, we are more intentional not to make people feel that way ever.
Yeah. I don't believe that most people go into the helping professions with the intention of harming people. I think there are probably people like that, unfortunately, but it's probably very rare. I think what happens most often is that people are dealing with compassion fatigue and burnout. And when you are fatigued and when you're burnt out, you don't have patience and you don't have the capacity for empathy. And so you become indifferent, cruel. And so people have to recognize that they've hit that place, hopefully before they've hit it in a big way, and either change jobs or take a vacation or get into therapy and just learn some good skills.
So before we ask you the last question, how can people get your book? How can people contact you? What resources do you have out there? Straight out there.
Yeah, I'm not on social media other than LinkedIn, so people can connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a website. It's zanderkeig.net. So zanderkeig.net. And on that webpage, people can get in touch with me. They can also do that through LinkedIn. You can find out about my different books. I have multiple books. I have 2 podcasts. You can find out about both of those and how to listen and how to be a guest if you'd like to be a guest on them as well. And then just all the different work that I'm involved in. I'm involved in a lot of different volunteer capacity right now. I'm doing a lot of different things with Braver Angels and Pro Human Foundations. So people want to just learn about what I'm up to, and maybe there's some organization that I'm involved with that they might want to also become involved with and be part of, making change in the world. Well, I would advise them to start with themselves, right? Make yourself your first client. It helps to be able to practice and in some cases master certain skills and strategies and the knowledge in order to pass it on. There's a bit of hypocrisy perhaps if we're telling people to do things that we're not willing to do ourselves. And so that's what I would say is first start there. You don't actually need to get a master's degree or a doctorate degree in order to help people who want to improve their well-being. You can go through a accredited and certified coaching program that's focused on self-care or well-being. There's lots of different, even just bachelor's degrees. There's so many, a bachelor's degree in social work, human services, psychology. There's a lot of things that you can do that if you want to get some kind of education, if you want, but again, I don't even think you have to have a high school diploma to go through a coaching program, but you have to make sure that it's a reputable one. Right?
Right.
It's not an over the night, do it in 3 hours, pay some money. You want one that lasts several weeks, few
Yes.
months. You want one that's, and so
Yep.
make sure that's what you're checking into and start volunteering at an organization that's already doing the things that you want to do. And then you will meet the people that you need to meet in order to find the different opportunities that might be good ones for you down the line.
What is the biggest life lesson nugget that you can leave with us today? Life lesson.
Biggest life lesson. Wow. That's a big question to
That's why it's the last
Doreen.
question.
It is the last question. I'm going to borrow from, I believe it was the Dalai Lama or Thich Nhat Hanh. They're both Buddhists, but a very different kind. And one of them said something that has always stuck with me. And it was this, that when people are treating you poorly, if people are lying to you, if they're stealing from you, if they are talking to you in a way that is, coercive and destructive and abusive, the question we have to ask ourselves is, what am I doing that is communicating to that person or those people that it is okay for them to do that, right? At the time when I learned this, the concept that I was focusing on was, why was this person in my life lying to me? And the answer was, because if they told me the truth, I would be very angry and I would behave in a way that they did not want to experience, right? So why are people doing the things they're doing? How are we communicating to people that we're not worthy of the truth and of
Mm.
respect and of love? Are we disrespecting ourselves? Are we disrespecting others, right? Are we too harsh? Are we highly critical with ourselves and with other people? Are we not creating an openness for people to come to us and say, I'm really struggling with this thing, or, there's this thing that you're doing that I don't really like. And I would hope that I'm as open as possible. Nobody's perfect. And that would be the second thing. Like doesn't exist. So don't strive for it. But, it's like we are always communicating to other people how to treat us, whether we're aware of it or not. And we should become as aware of it as possible.
Wow. I'm writing that down. What are we communicating to other people that says that we are not aware to be loved and to be treated with kindness? Maybe it's the way we show up. So people are scared of being their real selves. They're
Yeah.
scared of being vulnerable or transparent
Yeah.
because of our reaction.
That's right.
Well, we need to go inside of us and figure that out, why we show up that way and traumatizing everybody around them.
Yeah.
And people are different around them, but when they go outside, they're totally different human beings. What are we doing
Yeah.
to make people feel or do that around us? That is so
Yeah.
deep. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody is going to make an absolute change. It's like, if somebody has a particular belief about something, they may or may not change that belief,
Mm-hmm.
but how they're
Yes.
communicating about it,
Right.
they can change. To whom they're communicating it, they can
Mm-hmm.
change, so that, maybe getting together, for the holidays with the family isn't the time to air all the things.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And usually that's what happens.
That's what they say about family, but doesn't have to be that way.
Yes.
Nowadays, I remember hearing a couple of years ago a psychiatrist on the television, telling people, you know, that they shouldn't go home for the holidays if their parents or some people in their family, maybe voted for somebody that they don't like, or right, so it was a psychiatrist advocating for people to cut off their families. That I don't think is necessary. That to me is the
Yeah.
other extreme.
No, that
So
is
somewhere in between,
right.
not walking on eggshells, but not cutting people off.
Exactly. Amazing show. This is the show. We had an hour and we can keep going. So
Probably.
Thank you so much. It went like 5 minutes because we were intense. It was good conversation.
Yeah.
And I really hope that the listeners, our viewers, I hope you guys have learned a lot. He's given his information. Please follow his shows, follow his podcast, read his book. I'm going to get it. I'm sure all of us are going to learn. Thank you so much. And please remember to share this so that someone else can be blessed by this conversation we've had tonight. Zander, I really appreciate you coming to the show. Such a great conversation we've had. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to Positive Outcomes. Follow the show and share this episode to inspire someone's next chapter.